So we are at the front generation of white Tara, and just for a moment, bring yourself back into the mandala of Tara and take a moment to correct your motivation. Think about why you're practicing this. Think about really wanting to allow the practice to enter your heart to open, and for that heart to make connections. So just bring your motivation back for a moment. Arise as the Bodhisattva, those heroic beings who really feel so interconnected that they just want to help everyone who's suffering. And now, after arising as the Bodhisattva, we are going to do the front generation of Tara. And there are some of these practices where you actually will do what's called a self-generation, and where you will self-generate yourself as white Tara. This practice is a front generation, which means you visualize Tara in front of you. So in our sadhana, our liturgy, the next part that we recite is, in the space before me appears a white lotus with a moon disk upon it. The love and compassion of all the enlightened beings appear from this as noble wish-fulfilling Tara. She sits on a lotus and moon cushion, a luminous moon halo at her back. Youthful and radiant, her right hand gestures in an invitation to liberation, and her left hand, holding an utpala flower, indicates the protection of the three jewels, giving courage and assurance to those dominated by fear. Just did the wrong finger. It's this one. Ring finger and thumb. So one of the rich aspects of the Vajrayana is that every aspect of white Tara has a symbolic meaning and a very full teaching behind it. And if we had more time today, I would really love to go through those teachings with you, but we don't have enough time to do that. So we're going to focus right now in this meditation retreat on her left hand. We're going to really go into those teachings just so you can experience this. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about some techniques for learning how to visualize in meditation if you haven't done that before, and learning how to practice with it. And I'll tell you the steps that I sort of took. So one of the first steps was finding a picture of white Tara that matches the teaching that I was doing. There's many, many different forms of white Tara. And in this form, the basics of her, of what you really need to find, is that she's white in color, that she has 7 eyes. So an eye, a third eye right here, 2 eyes, the normal eyes that we have, eyes on each of the hands, and eyes on the sole of the feet, which all of those are in the picture that I gave you. Then she wears what are called Sambhogakaya ornaments. And Sambhogakaya in some ways means the body of beatitude. It's a body of such beauty. It's like a radiant form. And so if you could imagine yourself in the most radiant form, let's say you were getting married. Usually when you get married, you want to dress up in your finest clothes, which there's no definition of that. But whatever in your aspect of your being you would like to display as finery, that would be your Sambhogakaya ornaments. And that's what she's wearing. So she has a crown on the top of her head, and Amitabha Buddha, the Buddha of long life, is at the crown of her head. If it's not in the crown, it's symbolized by a jewel. And then she also wears beautiful, beautiful jewelry. And one of the stories that I love that I've read in books is that Tibetans want her to wear the most exquisite jewelry, because the more beautiful her jewelry is, the more wealth she grants to you, which I just think is a great thing. So she's wearing a crown, she wears earrings, and she has 3 necklaces. She has one at her neck, she has one at her that touches her heart area, and then she has one that comes down to her lower, how would you call it? The lower belly. Oh, yeah. Down. Yeah, I think that they are connected to some of the chakras. She is not wearing a shirt, but she is wearing a scarf, and out of modesty, oftentimes she will have parts of her necklace that will cover her breasts, but oftentimes they're also visible because part of the mother is nurturing, and of course the breasts are an aspect of that. She wears a shawl. She also has bracelets on this part of her arm, so the midpoint where the two parts of the arm join. She also wears bracelets on each of her wrists, and you maybe can't see them, but she has ankle bracelets on both of her ankles. So she's decked to the nines. I mean, and she's also in the form of a 16-year-old, which we have a woman in our meditation community who's practicing White Tara, and I absolutely love her. She's in her 70s, and at one point she said to Khenpo, "I cannot imagine myself as a 16-year-old." And we started all laughing because it was wonderful. The 16-year-old, what is she's a deity, a Buddha of longevity and health and healing. So 16 must be the age in Tibetan Buddhism where they feel like you're at the height of your vitality. Or oftentimes they had children very young. So you're at the height of your ability to give birth to many things. I'm not sure what the exact maybe teaching on that is, but that's my feeling about it. And I have sort of read that in some of the books as well. She oftentimes wears these rainbow color leggings, and oftentimes depictions of the Buddha of compassion, Chandrasekhar Avalokiteshvara, and other forms also wears these rainbow colored leggings. And I personally think that that symbolizes some of this rainbow light, some of this health and vitality of energy. She holds what is called an utpala flower, which looks very much like a lotus. Khenpo has told me that it is a flower that so rarely blooms that it is considered rare and precious. So her utpala flower is a symbol of something that rarely appears, but is highly cherished. And as we get into this, the utpala flower, I will talk about this shortly, but I'll just mention now, one of them is in full bloom. It has a bud that is ready to bloom, and it has a part of the flower that is just fading. It's just fading, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Imagine her as looking at you with infinite kindness, as if she sees and knows everything about you, even your deepest dark secrets that you don't even want yourself to know or anyone else. And she looks at you with amazingly love and compassion. So this is really important, that when you visualize her in front of her, she knows you so well, but she is radiating love and compassion to you. And if you're having a hard time visualizing all aspects of herself, I really think that a wonderful area to start with is the face. Just try to get the face in clear visualization and get that kind of connection between her face and your face. Another techniques for visualization is to build the visualization from either the top down or the bottom up. And when I visualize Tara, I do it from the bottom up. That just makes sense to me. But literally you go through lotus flower, moon disc, crossed legs in Vajra posture, eyes, ankle bracelets, silk leggings, hand gestures with eyes, holding utpala flower, ring finger and thumb together, gesture of liberation, bracelets on the arms, bracelets here, 3 types of necklaces, shawl, face, earrings, beautiful, beautiful black hair, crown. And you can see how you just build it up. And you can do exactly what I did, is just recite it out loud and start visualizing up. And then some point after you've done this enough, she'll just arise. Like you'll see the whole thing instantly. So when you're doing this, find a photo that you really like the looks of, that really resonates with you. You can go online and Google White Tara. Click on images. You will find so many different images of White Tara. find one of them that really resonates with her and just check and see if you can find the aspects of her that are mentioned in this ritual text. So she should be sitting on a lotus flower. She should have kind of a sense of a white disc that you can see under there. And her hand gestures definitely should be the same. And she should have the 7 eyes. So that is my suggestion. And then one of the things that is really helpful to learn how to visualize vividly is to focus on one aspect for a while in your practice. And see it until it's about as vivid and as present in front of you as you possibly can imagine. So the other day when I was practicing, I was focusing on this gesture. I was focusing on the eye in the palm of her hand, seeing the color of it, seeing the eyelashes, feeling what it would be like to have an eye in your hand. And doing that, eventually, if you work on different parts, you get such a sense of that in your own physical being that visualization becomes natural, very easy for you. The other thing is that use this as a support, but eventually you want to know that she should be 3-dimensional, just like we are. We have fronts and we have backs. And so you can also start to really work on imagining, if you're above her, what it would look like to see her crown and look down and see. You see those, then you're seeing those eyes on the feet facing upward. And you want to see her as being vivid and present, but not solid. So again, you're reducing a little bit of your feeling that the objects around us are permanent forms. And this helps when you see her as having these colors, but they're like crystalline, they're like rainbow light, so they shine. They have the ability to be luminous. And so that's some of the techniques of visualization that you can have. And at some point you really will feel that presence, and you'll feel the presence of that Tara energy radiating from her, but of course it's radiating out of yourself. She is reminding you of your wisdom energy. And it's beautiful in that way. She really is, you should feel like, relate to her as the mother, relate to her as really embracing you, nurturing you. And remember that she really has vowed to provide you with whatever you need. So, should not feel any problem with asking Tara as one of your aspirations if you really are in need of maybe finding a new job. There's a place that we get where we can make aspirations. It's the illustrious Tara, be aware of me, remove my obstacles, quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Well, being shown the path of finding a new job is an excellent aspiration. There's many good things that come out of that. So at that point in the practice, you can ask her to grant you that. And then, see how feeling like there is this ability to manifest as all things in your life that might awaken in you also the ability to remove any obstacles that is preventing you from finding a new job. So you can use that in the practice. So let's go into, just because I want to explain to you some of the richness of the symbolism. And then Khenpo Katar's book on the wish-fulfilling wheel, the practice of white Tara, he goes through this very extensively, each part of the Tara symbolism. And so you can find that book, and if you're interested, read the teachings behind each of her hand gestures or each of the clothing that she wears and things like that. So when we recite that her left hand holds an Utpala flower, at this point you can look at my left hand and you can see that I have 3 fingers standing up, right? There's 3 fingers up. And this is when we could recall the teachings on the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha called the Triple Jewels. So this hand gesture, which is called a sacred mudra is a sacred symbolic hand gesture. It's a way that you could place your body in a teaching. These 3 upright fingers are symbols of the triple gems. And also, one of the things is that the triple gems in Buddhism are called the wish-fulfilling gems because they are the source in some ways of wisdom, and they're also the source of what we need in life. So this is an affirmation that Tara, through her understanding of wisdom, is willing to grant us the ultimate wisdom of enlightenment. The next thing is that at her heart, okay, between the thumb and ring finger right here, and I'm going to turn it this way because I want you to see the circle right here. So between her thumb and ring finger, she's holding the stem of a white utpala flower that blossoms beside her left ear. But the stem is coming out of her heart area. It's connected to her heart area. So her thumb and her ring finger in this position of showing like a circle represents the inseparability of phenomena and their nature. Again, this is another symbol of this type of circle of life that we're talking about. The stem of the utpala flower is at her heart to indicate that her mind, her heart, is never separated from the nature of reality. So that, and this also symbolizes in Buddhism what's called the Dharmakaya, or the truth body. And the truth body is, there are three kayas, which are, the kaya means body. There's the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. And the Dharmakaya represents the ultimate nature of reality, the ultimate nature of the mind, which, again, I talked about in Tibetan Buddhism, that is often symbolically located in the heart, although in reality it has no location. So that is the stem coming down at the heart. And her mind, the nature of the mind, her awareness, is never separate from the form kayas. And so these two fingers also symbolize the form kayas. And what I mean by the form kayas is that the Sambhogakaya, one of its ways that it manifests is through sound. And the Nirmanakaya, one of the ways that it manifests is through physical manifestations of bodies or forms. So you have here a teaching that if you've learned about the three Buddha bodies, the three kayas, in this hand gesture, it's reminding you of the triple gems, and it's reminding you of the Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya, which is the two forms of Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. That you can all, the kayas you can learn about later. But I just wanted to show you that, illustrate to you that this gesture contains meaning. And that's also why we don't necessarily want to alter the form of white Tara too much, because once we learn those teachings behind that, they can really remind us of the vast teachings. On the other hand, it's really important to know that that is a teaching method, and that white Tara really is formless. She arises in ultimate forms. So we need to balance that out. And that's why also I think that, forms of the sacred feminine, I don't feel that there's any conflict by seeing like the Virgin Mary, for example, as a sister or as a connected energy, for example, to white Tara. But when you're doing the visualization in a practice, you do want to keep her form in the way that she is in the practice. Because as you deepen your practice, you can learn about those gestures, and that will help you remember the ultimate teaching. Another thing is that the white utpala flower, as I mentioned to you, has three buds. One is fully in bloom. It's symbolizing the Buddha of the present. One that has bloomed, symbolizing the Buddha of the past. And one that is about to bloom, it's a bud that's about to open up, symbolizing the Buddha of the future. And they all come off this one stem, which is reminding us that the Buddhas of the past, present, and future are one in all having the same nature as Tara. And also there is teachings on the nature of the mind, on the wisdom mind, that talks about in the wisdom mind there is no past, there is no present, there is no future. So this is also recalling a teaching to us about the nature of wisdom or the nature of mind. So as I said, you can learn more about Tara's symbolism over the time. And Khenpo Katar, Karthar, his book on the wish-fulfilling wheel, the practice of noble white Tara, has a really good chapter on the symbolism. So if you want to go more in depth on that. But for now, while we're visualizing here, it's really important, I'd like you to visualize her as beautiful and radiant in her aspect of radiating out loving kindness. And again, see her as radiating out this rainbow energy, which is her aspect of all the different formations of anything that we need manifest come out of, in some ways, these 5 elements or come out of these qualities. And so that is, again, really reminding you to see that what emanates out of her can take very, very many forms. If you're struggling to visualize her vividly, focus on one part. And so for example, today when you're visualizing her, choose a part that really resonates with you and really focus on that for a while, maybe in our next practice session. So when you start to really visualize her and see her as looking upon you with unconditional love, there is a part of this which will start transforming your view, and you'll really start to see Tara in many, many people. And just like I told you about the bearded man that I saw at Temperance River State Park, when I got closer to him, his eyes were just so beautiful. They were radiating. And that is this light that is peeking out from people. And I think that there's something about the eyes. In Buddhism, the eyes are called the lamps of wisdom, which I think is very beautiful. So maybe focus today on her face and her eyes and imagining this beautiful light, this beautiful radiance coming out of her eyes. So I think that we should definitely practice at this point. And we're going to pause after we recite how we do the front generation, and we're going to spend some time visualizing. And I'm going to ring the bell at the start of that visualization process, and then I'll ring the bell at the end of it, and just see what arises for you, and do the best you can. Because we've been going through the Tara practice fairly swiftly, but we're going to pause now at this point to work on our visualization process. So let's take refuge 3 times. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. Generating Bodhicitta 3 times. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. Prayer of the 4 boundless qualities 3 times. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. And may they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. And may they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. All sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. And may they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Front generation of white Tara. And at this point, remind yourself that you are relaxing all of your fixed thoughts and just relaxing everything. You're clearing the decks with the Shunyata mantra. And then out of this space of vast openness, beautiful Tara arises in front of you. Om Maha Shunyata Jnana Vajra Sobhava Atma Ko Hung. In the space before me appears a white lotus with a moon disk upon it. The love and compassion of all the enlightened beings appear from this as noble wish-fulfilling Tara. She sits on a lotus and a moon cushion, a luminous moon halo at her back. Youthful and radiant, her right hand gestures in an invitation to liberation. Her left hand, holding an utpala flower, indicates the protection of the three jewels, giving courage and assurance to those dominated by fear. Okay, I'm going to ring the bell and we're going to sit and meditate for 10 minutes with Tara as our object of meditation. And what I mean by that is just bring as much focus of Tara as you can in front of you in your mind's eye, and just try to remain with a part of her visualization and rest with that. And just allow, it's like, imagine that this is your mind. Just set your mind down on that part of Tara. Set your mind down on the part of the Tara without the meditation bowl falling on the floor. And when you set it down, just release it and relax into whatever portion of Tara you're visualizing. If you can relax into the entire visualization of Tara, wonderful. But just relax and in some ways see what comes up and then just remain with that. And know that there's nothing else to do. Just remain right there. And we're going to do that for 10 minutes. And if you need to take a break, just for a moment, take a break and then set your mind down again and just rest again. So I will time you, and then when I hit the bell again, you'll know that we can continue on. My eyes always water. I don't know why. Does anyone want to share anything or ask any questions at this point? Ask about visualization. Share what it felt like to be visualizing Tara in front of you. Gary.
I felt like we're very affluent here, and she's sharing with people that are very starving and poor, and her love is connected to everyone.
Yeah.
I pictured that.
You pictured that. That's beautiful. I'm going to share with what you just said. So people who are watching in YouTube land, Gary was just saying that when he was visualizing Tara, he said he feels like we live in a very affluent society. But you were visualizing the fact that she was providing for people everywhere who are in need, or who don't have as much as we do. And that he was feeling that connection of her energy to all people in need. Yeah? It's beautiful. Anyone else want to ask questions about visualization practice or anything else that we've discussed so far about the practice? Share anything?
I think it's unusual to have a goddess or an image who is wearing jewelry and is richly dressed, because there's so much against the tradition that I'm familiar with in Christianity, right? And yet I think it's a very empowering tradition, especially for women, to think of a person with tremendous compassion, but also the radiant richness of power in body, in form of compassion. I mean, the force of that.
You know, one thing that Tsogtsar Khyentse Rinpoche talked about when I was in Los Angeles recently is he's commissioning paintings of 21 Taras. And he's commissioning them in ways that he envisions them, which I think are being updated a little bit in the sense of including a more maybe Western vision. But I think that, this tradition comes out of India, and you can see the aspects of sort of the Raj time period, or this incredible richness of culture in India, which is a very sensual, aesthetic culture. Even today, Indian women, I love the jewelry and the saris and everything that they dress in. But I think also she's called Noble Lady Tara, and in some ways you can see her as she's very regal and like a queen. So in some ways she's dressed in the idea in ancient India of what a queen or what nobility looks like. And so in some ways her jewelry is a symbol also for her nobility, which is her nobility is of course her qualities of generosity, of compassion, of loving kindness. So I think that you can see that also as an aspect. But for Gary, he was just mentioning that she was showing up as being really connected to people in need. So even though she's rich, she sort of has an abundance, like an ever-flowing abundance to share, which is quite beautiful. But yeah, I think different traditions see the mother in different ways. So that's something that I think is interesting to study or interesting to contemplate. Any other things that have come up and sprung into your mind? Didn't it feel good just to rest for a while? I really enjoyed that. I thought it was wonderful. Okay, so now we're turning to the mantra recitation, the longevity practice, and healing activities. And we recite at this point, brilliant light radiates from the syllable tam within her heart, collecting back the essence of inexhaustible vitality and powerful blessings of body, speech, and mind. Energy streams forth from Tara's heart and body. I and all beings absorb this nectar of light and are cleansed and revitalized, obtaining the realization of deathlessness. And then we recite the mantra. But before we get into the mantra, the 10-syllable mantra of Tara and the long life mantra, I want to talk a little bit about the tam syllable. And the tam syllable is located in the upper left-hand corner of the text on that page. So one thing is, if you can't visualize the tam syllable in Tara's heart, visualize that light radiating from a white sphere of a ball of energy, if you think about it in that way. Or you can visualize the white letter T, which is very familiar to you, and visualize that T as radiating light. The idea of behind the tam is that the tam syllable is Tara's enlightened mind. And it's also the symbol for your mind, your enlightened mind, as you visualize Tara. So light radiates out from her heart and collects blessings of the inexhaustible vitality from all enlightened beings, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then enters your heart and fills your body. Now I want to talk a little bit about this idea of inexhaustible vitality. Because you're already connected with this, and you know this. For example, I experience inexhaustible vitality when I go out in nature, for example. So when I was at Temperance River State Park and was sitting next to the waterfall and, just watching this tremendous amount of energy in a continuous stream going down, and had the chance just to relax my body, relax my mind, and stop speaking for a while, you start in some ways melting into the nature around you. And then you can really feel the sunlight, you can feel the wind that's flowing, you can feel the ground that's underneath you, you can feel the heat from the sun, and you can sort of already connect into the inexhaustible vitality of nature. And in some ways, many people report when they're in nature feeling rejuvenated after they do that. And so in some ways, when you do that, by relaxing in that way, you're opening up the boundaries of your body and kind of merging into the spaciousness or into the environment around you. And so in some ways, this inexhaustible vitality, that the way I visualize it, that Tara is collecting, is present around us at all times. It's just how she's collecting it is being really aware of it and feeling totally interconnected with it. And so what you can imagine when this, the Tam syllable, for example, radiates out light and then collects back this inexhaustible vitality, and this fills you, you can think about that as a process of times when you have relaxed so deeply that it feels as if every cell in your body has just gone back to its original sort of vitality of probably when you first arrived in this planet. I mean, you remember how children are just like a bundle of energy? I mean, you can just see that. They have a tremendous amount of natural vitality. So I think that we've had experiences like that. And so she has that ability, because she is this vitality, to radiate it out, and then it's reflected back to her, and then she grants that to you. And meditation practice does that. It really is, they've done studies on it, especially in Wisconsin, Madison at the lab there, where they've hooked people up to these MRI machines, had them meditate, and you can see that their brain plasticity is changing. That we think of our brain and our, as like these solid forms, but as they're meditating, they can see changes over time in how brain function is working. And one of the things that they're finding is that part of the brain that would be like if there was a location for joy or for happiness or well-being, gets more stimulated and more activated. So in some ways, this isn't even just like an imaginary process. And when we're meditating or when we're imagining this light coming back into us, we're seeing ourselves as permeable. We're seeing ourselves as being able to be transformed. And so to me, I always think in Buddhism, we're not making anything up. We're just becoming more sensitive and more aware of probably a natural process that's happening. Like every time we breathe, we bring in a tremendous amount of vitality. We breathe out. And so just in breathing, is without this vitality that comes in through oxygen, we wouldn't be here. So I don't think this is something that is too stretch of our imagination to imagine. But in this sadhana, in this ritual text, this is how we, at this point, having visualized Tara, at this point we see this light radiating out. She's reflecting back to us a tremendous amount of light, and that goes into our heart. So the syllable Tam at this point is the wisdom mind. It's like the awareness of inexhaustible vitality. It's like the essence. So this is the essence. That's what the Tam syllable is. It's called a seed syllable. And so just like Gary's squash plants, that he has these seeds, that in the seed is all the potential for the plant and the squash and the fruition of it. This is Tara's seed. This is her essence, and this is also her full potential actualized. So again, we have this full circle. What is the light that's radiating out and radiating back is all contained in this seed, in this potential. This is the same thing as I said, that Tam is a symbol for the wisdom mind, for the enlightenment mind. We already have Buddha nature. We have this seed. We have this Buddha nature inside of us. We just need to allow it to grow and flourish and reach its full potential. So again, you can think of this Tam as a seed syllable. And if you can't visualize it as a T, a radiating white T, or visualize it as this white seed. But this white seed happens to radiate the most brilliant light, the most vital light that you can possibly imagine. Also, I find it personally very, very helpful. So after you get to the end of the line, energy streams forth from Tara's heart and body. I and all beings absorb this nectar of light and are cleansed and revitalized, obtaining the realization of deathlessness. At this point in the practice, I find it really, really helpful to spend some time, pause, and visualize that. So again, I told you that for me it works for this white light, this rainbow light, this liquid light, almost like a mercury-like light, to enter into my crown chakra and to see myself like a vase being filled up from head to toe. And then imagine myself radiating just like Tara, this rainbow light, this incredible vitality. Again, if you're practicing for a person, you're doing this as a healing practice or a long life practice, a vitality practice for someone whom you know is really suffering, imagine them at this point absolutely being filled up with this light and being radiantly happy, radiantly joyful. I feel it's very important when you're thinking about people who are ill to at the same time know that to visualize them as being healed. I think this is really important to make that connection. And it doesn't mean that their illness has to go away. It just means that no matter what illness we have, there's always a part of ourself that is very much healthy, that is very much alive. It is very much. So it's not ignoring the suffering, but at the same time, we really want to, when we see them, reflect back to them positive qualities, reflect back to them healing energy. And so this practice is one way you can do that. So this practice works with the subtle energy body. And really, I think that we should have Rebecca teach us sometime about the subtle energy body, about the chakras, about what are called in Tibetan Buddhism the nadis, prana, and bindus. The nadis are the subtle energy body of like the meridians. They're like the we have veins and arteries. They are like the light veins or the light arteries within our body. The prana is the energy or the vitality. So when you breathe in, you're breathing in that energy of oxygen, but also we call breathing the breath of life. And that's a metaphor for the fact that we are taking in some ways, incredible vitality, incredible elements. And then there's also these things called bindus, which are these seeds of light, which are essences. And there's very wonderful teachings on that. But when you are visualizing yourself as having been purified and cleansed and radiating light, you need to realize that we do have, at least in Tibetan Buddhism and in many Asian traditions, we have these channels of light inside of us. We have these channels of subtle energy that are moving.
And in Western science as well.
Yeah, starting in Western science as well.
Yeah.
So this is like an area that you can investigate and open up. And we're very much taught in Tibetan Buddhism that our subtle energy body affects our mind. So you can see this, that when your subtle energy body is balanced, when your physical energy body is balanced, when you have health and vitality, your mind, your emotions are much more calm, or they're much more balanced as well. So this practice is starting to get us to be more connected with subtle levels of energy, and meditation does that in any case. But Tara practice is sometimes when you're meditating, you might feel your body become weightless, and you may also in some ways start perceiving light a little bit differently. And I was thinking of this as like stepping down, like you're going from like your level of gross thoughts or gross form, focusing on the forms that are outside of us, turning your inner wisdom mind on the inside. And as you settle into more subtle and subtle states of consciousness, your sense of your actual solidity reduces. Your mind is starting to notice things in a different way. And sometimes you can really feel weightless. And sometimes you can feel like, your hand is, radiating light. You're just perceiving it more like that. So again, Tara as a being radiating light and as a wisdom being is in some ways reflecting in a mirror back to us some things about ourself, about our subtle mind that we don't normally connect with. But through this practice of visualization and working with this, we can start connecting with that on a deeper level. And that subtle energy oftentimes has a very peaceful, resting, rejuvenating quality to it. And so you can also connect with that at this point. So now we're going to go into the actual mantras. But please pause when you get to the end of this, talking about this end of the portion of the light radiating, to experience that. And to not just think about it, but try to feel it in your body, because that will really help you kind of notice also how to take better care of yourself. So one of the things that my teacher talks about is recently he started noticing that caffeine was giving him headaches. And at some point he said that white Tara just helped him drop it. Just realize, stop needing to give up caffeine. And he said there's oftentimes things that, we feel like we're so attached to, but as we start to notice how our outer energy is affecting our inner energy and vice versa, we might get the motivation through white Tara practice to start taking better care of ourselves physically. And that can really obviously extend your life and increase your vitality and things like that. So again, he says that white Tara has really supported him in doing that. So I think it's very possible. I know that since I've been practicing white Tara, have gone through tremendous amounts of healing, a lot of for me on the emotional level. So I also have experienced this. But I think what it is it's this lessening the boundaries between the inner and outer and becoming more aware of our energy flow, of how our mind works, of how when we feel content and vital. And of course, that's increased sensitivity in ourselves can help us have increased sensitivity to the well-being of other people as well. So that, I think, is a wonderful aspect of this practice. So now we're coming to the mantra recitation. And I want to talk a little bit about mantra, because part of the power of mantra is that these short prayers, these sacred sounds, are the encoded energy of Tara. So when you recite the Tara mantra, you are reciting the energy of the deity in sound. And also, I feel very strongly that many people for thousands of years have recited the 10-syllable mantra of Tara, Om Tara Tutari Ture Soha. And I think in some ways that when you recite that, you connect in with all of these people who have practiced Tara, with the field of energy of Tara on this planet. And this is not something that is just to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There are, prayers that when Jesus gave his followers the Our Father prayer, and he said, whenever you recite this, think of me and know I'll be there. That is a sacred mantra. That's what we mean by sacred mantra, that a person of realization is encoding their wisdom in the form of a sacred prayer that when recited can evoke their presence and their wisdom at that moment. And at the same thing, if you're reciting the prayer of the Virgin Mary, and of course, you can see this just demonstrated. The Christians have rosaries, we have malas. They're the same thing. And what we do is it's the continuity of wisdom flowing through the prayers as we count our prayers. And that when we recite these sacred sounds, that we're connecting in with all of the energy that's been placed heartfelt into these mantras. So that is the essence of mantra. Mantra, literally in Sanskrit, also means mind protection. So Tibetans recite Tara's mantra, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha, to protect themselves from fear. And one of the ways that mantra protects you from fear is that just in the case that when I'm focused on my lipstick, I can't visualize Tara. If I am focused, for example, on mantra and placing my mind on that and reciting it even out loud, the sound, that thought of fear gets replaced by that object of meditation. So that's also how it's mind protection. It becomes the object of your mind when your mind is like going all over the place and is watching the disaster channel and the disaster is proliferating. Bring it back to Tara's channel or to whatever channel is better for you to tune in and spend some time focusing your mind on that. So if you're suddenly experiencing fear, you can start reciting, if you have a good connection with it, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. And if you've practiced, that energy of calmness, of peace, just boom, right comes in. And that can really protect you from fear. So that is why mantra is called mind protection, because it's taking, it's using the form of sound to bring your mind to a state of peace or bring your mind to a state of enlightened awareness through the power of sound. And also, you know that if you allow the energy of fear specifically to proliferate, it can make a difficult situation much worse. So bringing yourself back can prevent adding more and more energy into a situation that might be already not helpful in the first place. So I have an example of this. Martine and I were in Kauai in Hawaii, and we were kayaking the Nepali coast. And I pulled out all of my best canoe and kayak examples for Ely, because you have such a big kayaking and canoeing culture up here. And we had really high swells. Like, we were right on the cusp of when they stop allowing you to kayak the Nepali coast because it starts to get dangerous. And I was at least way over my head, literally. And I was terrified. I mean, I seriously was terrified. And so for 7 hours, I recited Tara mantras pretty much nonstop. And I didn't know that I could recite Tara mantras for 7 hours nonstop. But given enough motivation and enough fear, at least on my part, they just came out. And so really, if you start getting what is called the mantra wheel or the mantra garland circulating in your heart or in your own circle of energy, by getting it going, just like if you would start spinning something, it's going to have a certain amount of energy that's going to keep it going. Man, 7 hours of Tara mantras, I made it through that trip, and I actually felt wonderful at the end of it. And I was still terrified at the same time. I still knew that I didn't feel comfortable there, but I also felt this kind of ability to move forward, an ability to move through that and move and go on. So that is why this is called mind protection. And at certain points, of course, I'd forget to be afraid, and then I wasn't. But you know, this is just a practical example of this. So if you need to find a mantra in your life, there's many. I mean, if you connect with the word peace, you can recite peace. You know, peace, 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 peace. If you connect with another sacred prayer, develop a practice of bringing that to mind when you really need to rely on it. And the way of doing that is like the Tibetans do, relying it on in every situation so that it's there when you really need it. So that is mantra. The picture on the upper right-hand corner is a lotus. And in the center of that is the Tam syllable again. Remember, that's the source of wisdom. It is enlightenment. And around that are 10 petals, one for each syllable of her mantra, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. And when you get to a certain point in your practice and you're reciting the mantra, you can take up what's called the mantra garland practice and imagine that, that mantra garland circling around your heart area, just to indicate further areas where the practice can be developed. But we're not going to go into that right now. Now I'm going to translate word for word the 10-syllable mantra, Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. In Sanskrit, I think the Soha would be pronounced Svaha. So The Om, as I talked to you before, is the essence of the awakened body. O, the essence of awakened speech, and the essence of awakened mind. So again, we're starting the mantra, and all of the mantras in this practice will start with Om. Tare means quickly with boldness. Tutare, clearing away all fear, distress, and the sufferings of all beings. And Ture, complete victory over all negativity via the truth of the nature of reality. So obviously these are spread out definitions, but that is sort of the meaning of the mantra. And then Sohar is all accomplishments. So Bardor Tulku Rinpoche translates this mantra as Om Tara, clear away all suffering through your realization of the nature of reality and grant us your accomplishments. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche translates as, I prostrate to the liberator, mother of all victorious ones. But one thing that you can just know that when you are reciting Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Soha, there's other teachings, for example, which also teach about the Four Noble Truths as being contained in this mantra, and also teachings about the reduction of the 8 great fears. So the mantra is very rich. You can study different teachings related to it. But in essence, you're calling out her name. So you're saying Tara, 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 Tara. Tara the Swift One, Tara the Liberator. You're calling out her name. And by saying this mantra, you again are aligning yourself with her energy of compassion. And so you're bringing her to mind. And by knowing her qualities, you're entering into this energy of Tara. Also, the purpose of it here at this point, I feel very strongly, is that we're visualizing Tara in front of us. And reciting the mantra is that we've already, through the visualization, are focusing our mind consciousness that has a visual aspect on the form of Tara. And at this point, we're adding in sound. So we're bringing another level of deep concentration, another level of meditational object into our practice. Again, we are aligning more and more aspects of ourselves. So we have these 3 aspects of the body, speech, and also the mind. So we're bringing these together in a more concentrated form. And whenever you do that, your energies come together and you are more vividly experiencing whatever you wish to do. And you know this, there's certain points where you become so absorbed in something that you talk about getting lost in it. So in some ways we are losing our sense of who we are, of our perception of ourselves, and we are losing ourselves in concentration to the nature of Tara, which ultimately is the nature of enlightenment and wisdom. So again, this is bringing us more and more and more concentrated down to this wisdom mind that we all have. So then let's look at the remaining prayers, and then we're going to practice some more. But let's go through the last 2 prayers. Now we're at the long life mantra, which is Om Tare, Tutare, Ture, Mama, Ayar, Jnana, Punye. Kempo pronounces this Pitang. So we're pronouncing it Pitang, Kuriye Soha. And the translation of this mantra is Tara, make my life force and health, knowledge, wisdom, and merit increase. Make it so. And the first part of the mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture, is Tara. Again, that's her name. That's her mantra is her name. Then Mama means my. Ayar is life force and health or vitality. Jnana is knowledge and wisdom. Punye is merit. Pitang is increase and thrive. And Kuriye Soha is make it so. So at this point, we are connecting in with the energy of vitality and long life, which is one of the special aspects that White Tara bestows. If you are practicing for another person, instead of saying Mama, you can say their name. So, for example, if I am practicing on behalf of the vitality and health of my teacher, Kempo Sherab Sangpo, I could say Om Tare Tutare Ture Guru, because Guru is the Sanskrit word for teacher. Ayar Dhyana Punye Pitang Kurure Soha. If I'm practicing on behalf of Martine, my husband, I could say Om Tare Tutare Ture Martine. Ayar Dhyana Punye Pitang Kurure Soha. So you can, at that point of mama, you can substitute a name for a person, or whatever. If you're thinking about the vitality of the earth, say Mother Earth. At that point. But one of the things that you can also know is you can just leave that mantra as it is. If you want to say mama, that's totally fine. Again, we've talked about our interconnectedness, our interbeing throughout this teaching. So just know that you are connected. You're interconnected with all sentient beings. So if you say mama and you're practicing and you're visualizing someone else, you're interconnected. You're making that connection. So you can do that. But I oftentimes think that if you are practicing for someone, why not put their name in there? It helps increase your target for where the practice is landing. But on the other hand, oftentimes this mantra is now such a part of me that I recite it and it gets turning and turning and turning. And so in some ways it might be a little bit easier to just always do mama. But you can have that intention of thinking about that person while you practice. Now we're going to talk about what is called no doubt, or vajra pride, or confidence. If it's your birthday, and you really want to receive gifts, but you don't tell anyone that you'd like to have some presents, you probably won't receive them. And then if somebody gives you something that you really love, but you kind of pretend that it's not a big deal, then in some ways you haven't fully received the gift of that person's love that is being given to you. So one of the ways that we receive blessings is that we have to ask for them. We have to be aware of the fact that we'd like to receive blessings. We also have to be aware of the fact that blessings are out there to be received. And we also have to be aware of the fact that to really receive them, we need to open ourselves up and have no doubt that it's possible for us to receive those blessings. So one of the things is that you don't need to have absolute confidence when you start this practice. But you need to have a little bit of openness to realize that it might be possible for you to receive the blessings of this practice. Without that, why even do it in the first place? Seriously, if you don't have at least a little bit of curiosity to see if it works, it'd be much better for you to go get a massage that you have confidence in, that might be rejuvenating or healthy for you. And there's no problem with that. But when you're experimenting with practices like that, have a little curiosity and have also a little bit of openness to seeing and feeling how the meditation practice changes your energy system, how it changes your mind, how it changes your life. And then as you practice more, you're going to start getting more confidence in the practice. And then eventually it's really helpful to have no doubt. Because no doubt is a state of wide open reception and wide open ability to really take in the natural vitality that's around us. So this is the power of blessings. I can, my teacher can try to bless me as much as possible with his teachings, but if I don't make myself a receptive vessel for those, in the sense if I don't pay attention to him when he's teaching, if I don't follow his advice, and if I never practice, no matter how much wisdom he has to pour into me, I'm like, a closed container, right? So one of the things that we need to do is open ourselves up to receive. And for many of us, this is really a challenge, especially for people who are very generous. There are some people who just, their natural state is giving and giving and giving. And if we don't have a real confidence that we have unlimited vitality in us, at some point we can get really drained. And in actuality, we can get drained. If we don't take care of ourselves, we can really drain ourselves. So that's part of Tara practice, is is if you're a person who's constantly used to giving, then you get to practice the generosity of receiving Tara's generosity. You get to practice receiving blessings. If you are a person that is afraid that there's not going to be enough, if you're living in a little bit of lack, then you can practice Tara as imagining that through Tara's blessings, you are able to infinitely give, and this is a way to practice generosity. You can use this both ways. So think about that. You can also do the same thing. You can think there's so much abundance, there's so much vitality that I can receive everything I need and I can send everything that I need. So work a little bit with your own mind. This practice is a form of Tonglen practice, which is like sending and taking. So you take on suffering, you send out compassion. You take on suffering, you send out love. You take on suffering, you send out lack of fear in the state of suffering. This is a Tonglen practice, giving and taking, sending and receiving. So you can work with that. And if you're practicing for another person, please, please, please visualize them as receiving this. Because if you have no doubt that they're receiving Tara's blessings, then in some ways you're recognizing the interconnectedness of us all, that we do live in a field of interconnected energy. And just as an example of this, even though we cannot see subtle energy, we need to know that it exists. And so, for example, if I would go over to Martine right now and give him a big, wet, sloppy kiss on the forehead, you would have no doubt that I was blessing him with my love and a bit of saliva. So you could see that, and I have no doubt that you would perceive that as the target arrived, the goal arrived on the target. But when you practice this, or any form of Tonglen, giving and taking, or any form of prayer for that matter, you're working with the subtle energy. You're working with your subtle thoughts, you're working with the subtle energy. And for example, if I practice Tara practice, and I'm practicing on behalf of Martine, I have no doubt that it's going to benefit our relationship because first of all, I'll become more like Tara, who is really very, very loving. But also just on a level, you never know how practicing Tara is going to affect my actions on the outside too. So by practicing Tara, I might remember to give him more wet, sloppy kisses. Oh no. So again, there's this connection between the inner and the outer. And just because we can't see subtle energy with our gross eyes, with our gross visual consciousness, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I know that you all know this. But oftentimes when we're thinking about taking on compassion and sending out suffering, it's true, we're training ourselves to have more compassion. And we may not be at the level where we actually can that is actually happening. But, Khenpo has talked about, people who have practiced this so much, Buddhist meditation masters, that, for example, he tells a story that in a monastery, there was someone who threw a rock at a dog. And we're in front of a meditation master. And he connected so much with that dog that he ended up having a bruise of a rock spontaneously appearing on his body where that stone hit the dog. So he was in some ways taking on that energy of suffering, and it was manifesting physically. And whether you believe this or not, I oftentimes think that people don't tell stories for any reason. What he's trying to say is on some level we are so interconnected that if you really get down to that, it might actually be possible. And so another story, or another miracle, is that, for example, I always thought about how did Jesus heal human beings? How did he heal? How do people heal? And what he would do is mirror back to them their state of being already healed. And if they could trust him and believe him that that was true, you talk about that as a spontaneous miracle of healing. But what he was seeing in them was the state of their health. and knew that it was absolutely true and had no doubt in it. And when that person agreed with his no doubt, that was the state that they had. That was the miracle. So in some ways, this no doubt, we need to fake it until we make it. But you can really see that if you start looking in your mind at times when you've had no doubt, it appears as if things are spontaneously happening in your life. And we call those miracles. It was amazing. But part of us had to participate in that amazing to be able to receive that. And that part of us that participates in that is no doubt. So as you practice something and you do something over and over again, you get closer to a point where you have no doubt. And you do this all the time. You know, you open up the toothpaste tube and you have no doubt that if you squeeze it, the toothpaste is going to come out. That's based on enough experience with toothpaste tubes, right? So this is not, we can expand on this. We can expand on this very common experience that we've all had. The last part is Tara's prayer. So we say Tara's prayer after we do the long life mantra is, illustrious Tara, please be aware of me, remove my obstacles, quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Before you recite this, pause in your practice at home and think about what are your obstacles that you'd like removed, and what also are your excellent aspirations that you would like to be granted. So that when you are reciting this prayer, you are sending out the request and you are opening yourself up, back up to receiving. Also, it really can help you realize what is important to you in your life. Because if somebody says to you, I'm going to quickly grant your excellent aspirations, man, you want to have some good ones, right? It's like when we learned about the genie that's going to give us the bottle, and if we rub it, we get 3 wishes granted. And man, there's all the stories about, oh, drats, I lost the first one. That was not a good wish. You got to get a better one in the second one. And then usually by the third one, you've really expanded your mind out and you said, oh man, I guess I don't need a cookie. You know, I might want something else. So at this point, pause and think about that. If you could exchange your obstacles for your excellent aspirations, what would you release in your life and what would you welcome in? And this can be really helpful. This is also a point where I think of Khenpo Sherab Sangpo, because this is a personal part of his Tara practice that when he was teaching it, you could tell he loves and really resonates with. So I always think of him. And I always think about the teachings and the wisdom that I'd like to receive. And so that's part of my own personal practice. But, you know, I really want to continue to ask him to continue to bless my mind and continue to open up the doors of wisdom that I know are inside, but I need some help. I need some good keys to unlock them. So I pause in my practice to think about my root teacher here. You can pause to think about Tara or anyone else that has really helped you and ask them to stay in your life and continue to grant you your excellent aspirations. So that is that part of the practice. And I'm going to pause and look at our time. We should practice at this point. And we're going to take a little bit of a longer time at this point because we just went through mantra in this session. We're going to take time to do mantra recitation, which to deepen it, you need to recite it more than 3 times. But if you only have a short period of time, the numbers are recite a mantra 3 times, 7 times, 21 times, or in this case, 108 times, 1 mala. And if you have a lot of time, you can recite them to infinity and beyond. So, but those are the numbers. So this time, since you don't have malas here, we're going to recite them based on time. And we are going to recite each mantra for a little less than 10 minutes each, because I'm timing based on our break too. So let's do the practice, and when we get to the mantra recitation, I'm going to ring the bell. Do what's called the whispered recitation, or the talking to your collar recitation, which means that you're moving your tongue and you're making some sound, but you're making it as if you were talking to yourself. So I would be reciting Om Tari Tu Tari Tu So Om Tari Tu so hot. And you can tell that there's breath moving in and out. My tongue is moving. I can hear it. By doing that, again, tongue moving, object of body focus, helps bring your mind in. Sound activates your consciousness of sound. And it also involves your breath moving in and out, which is really good.
Is it important to say it so fast?
No, you can say it at whatever pace you need to say it at. If you're learning it, say it very slowly. If you want to really combine the visualization of Tara with the mantra, you might say it Om Tare, Tu Tare, Tu Re Soha, and really be able to coordinate that visualization. Again, we need to be our own teachers. I talk about that all the time. Be your own teacher. Try it different ways. See what works best for you. See what helps you the most. For some people, my goodness, my teacher recites mantras at lightning pace. I think in monasteries they do that. I mean, he can recite things like I've never seen. I don't have that ability, so I recite much more slowly. And it's helpful also to decide how many mantras you're going to recite before you get to that point in the practice. So you can decide that based on how many malas. Like you can do, 5 rounds, 10 rounds, 15 rounds, or you can do that based on time. Either one is fine. So whatever is better for you, works better for you. Let's do that. Okay, so we will start at the beginning of the practice again. Refuge 3 times. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Tara, and her mandala. Generating Bodhicitta 3 times. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. For the benefit of all sentient beings, in order to obtain the state of perfection, I shall practice the sadhana of Tara. Prayer, the 4 boundless qualities 3 times. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering. May they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering, and may they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be apart from the sublime bliss that is free from suffering, and may they remain in a state of equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. Front generation of white Tara. Om Maha Shunyata Jana Vajra Sobhava Atma Ko Hang. In the space before me appears a white lotus with a moon disk upon it. The love and compassion of all the enlightened beings appear from this as noble wish-fulfilling Tara. She sits on a lotus and moon cushion, a luminous moon halo at her back. Youthful and radiant, her right hand gestures in an invitation of liberation. Her left hand, holding a pala flower, indicates the protection of the 3 jewels, giving courage and assurance to those dominated by fear. Mantra recitation, longevity practice, and healing activities. Brilliant light radiates from the syllable tum within her heart, collecting back the essence of inexhaustible vitality and powerful blessings of body, speech, and mind. Energy streams forth from Tara's heart and body. I and all beings absorb this nectar of light, and are cleansed and revitalized, obtaining the realization of deathlessness. So at this point, we'll do the 10-syllable mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, for a little bit less than 10 minutes. I'm going to ring the bell now, and when 10 minutes are over, I'll ring again. Okay, now we're going to recite the long life mantra, and a little bit less than that because I want to make sure we have time for our break. So I'm just going to remind you, Om Tare Tutare Ture, calling Tara, Mama, I, me, grant me, Ayur, long life, vitality, jnana, wisdom, punya, merit all good things in life, pitang, increase it infinitely, kuriye soha, make it so. And when you recite this, I want you to think of the make it so as the fact that Tara is so generous, so that when you think make it so, you have absolutely no doubt that you're receiving at that point these qualities. So again, we're bringing in a little bit of that, reminding ourselves of that no doubt, and opening ourselves up at this point to receive the blessings of Tara. And we're going to recite this a little bit less, so we make it to our break. So I will again ding the bell when we're done reciting this. Okay, and now we'll recite Tara's prayer 3 times. Again, take a moment to think about anything that you perceive as an obstacle in your life, or maybe in the life of the person that you're practicing for. And then also think about if your excellent aspirations could be quickly granted, what would those be? So just take a moment to go within and see what comes to your mind. And then let's recite the prayer 3 times now. Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me. Remove my obstacles. Quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me. Quickly grant obstacles. Quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Illustrious Tara, please be aware of me. Remove my obstacles. Quickly grant my excellent aspirations. Okay, now we'll do the session conclusion. And at this point, please remember that everything is dissolving into light. All of that light dissolves into Noble Tara. Noble Tara dissolves into your heart center and she protects you. If you're practicing for the benefit of someone, also imagine that that light is dissolving into them and protecting them as well. So let's recite that, visualizing that. All phenomenal appearances become the mandala of Noble Tara. Everything dissolves into light and dissolves into Noble Tara. Noble Tara dissolves into my heart center and protects me. Let's offer the 7-limb prayer. I bow down in body, speech, and mind. I present offerings both actually arranged and mentally created. I purify all diluted actions. I rejoice in all pure activities. I request you to remain until total enlightenment. I request your wise and compassionate guidance. I dedicate my merit for the benefit of all beings. By the dedication of merit, by this virtuous practice, may I quickly attain the realization of Noble Tara. Accomplishing this, may I liberate all sentient beings without exception into the same realization. Closing prayer is the last one 3 times. May I attain in each and every life the sublime virtues of existence and peace. May I pursue the flawless mindset of altruism, working for the welfare of others on a vast scale. Through this very merit of mine, may every single sentient being eliminate all forms of negativity, and practice virtue forevermore. May Supreme Precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. May Supreme Precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. May Supreme Precious Bodhicitta take birth where it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never wane, but continue to grow forevermore. Okay, it's time for a break.